That's going to be distracting. That's probably going to be distracting too. Okay. In this video, we're going to be discussing the points cover on a Harley Davidson motorcycle, flipping it, what that means, how that meaning has changed over the last 60 years or so, and if you should flip the points cover on your Harley Davidson motorcycle. So stick around. And I totally did that like I have an intro, and I don't have an intro, so awkward. What a shaken people Sater here. I have recorded this video like 3 times now, and I've screwed all of them up. So I'm doing it again, and I've got notes this time, and I got myself some vodka, which will help, trust me. So I did a video a little while back about all of the modifications on my Harley Davidson Iron 1200 motorcycle. In that video, I had talked about how I flipped the points cover on my bike and had just kind of offhandedly said, you know, if you don't know what that means or you're interested in why I would do that, let me know in the comments and I will do a video explaining all of it. A user by the name of, sorry, I'm totally gonna screw this up, Victor Andrade, I hope I got that remotely right, left a comment and said, yeah, I would totally watch a video of you explaining it. There's a lot involved to it, which is why I didn't really discuss it in that. There's a lot of history and stuff. So here's that video. I hope you enjoy. I am fairly new to the whole motorcycle community and motorcycling in general. I got my first bike 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. I don't really interact with the motorcycle community around me. I go to the Harley store, it's close, so I go there quite a bit. As far as like going out on rides, group rides and stuff, it's just not really my scene. I don't know how much information that I know that I've managed to pick up is just known information. So I'm going to assume that whoever's watching this video doesn't know anything about motorcycles or Harley Davidson's history or anything. And I'm just gonna go from starting from there. So if you do know about motorcycles and you do know about Harley, there's probably going to be stuff in here that is irrelevant to you or redundant. But I just want to cover all of the bases so that all of this makes sense for someone who doesn't know anything. I feel like that's probably the fairest way to do it. This, focus. This is the points cover from my bike. It's just a little piece of metal. And on my bike, when you take this off, there's nothing behind it. It's just an empty little cave. On older bikes, this was the cover that covered the points thing, which has to do with the timing of the engine of the motorcycle. And you would pull this off to tweak the points. So they made this easy to get on and off. They've always just kind of been this weird little tin thing. Lots of bikes have them. Lots of older bikes have them. And these on newer bikes are really just there because points covers have been on Harleys for so long that there's lots of unique ones that you can buy secondhand and custom made ones and things. So they put that on there so that you can still do that if you want. Let's start at the beginning. Flipping the points cover on a Harley Davidson motorcycle means, in its basic form, the factory. What the factory has meant over the last 60 years has changed a couple different times and for a couple different reasons. To completely understand this, we have to go back to 1969. And Harley Davidson, of course, had been around for a long time, but in 69, they were on the brink of bankruptcy. And they basically, instead of folding and going under, they were bought out by a company called AMF, which stands for American Machine and Foundry. And at the time, they were mostly known for like bowling pins and stuff. They did sports equipment. Purchasing Harley Davidson was kind of a money thing for them. How the AMF years are looked at depends 100% on the person and their experiences with those AMF bikes. Some people say that the AMF years were some of the best bikes that Harley ever produced. Other people say that they're trash. There are rumors that the people on the line when they're building the bikes were doing things to screw the bikes up on purpose to make AMF look bad. When AMF bought Harley, the intent was always that Harley would at some point be able to get back on its feet. So there were a lot of people who were really hoping for Harley to do well and to basically buy themselves back, sort of. One thing AMF did when they bought Harley was to go into the Milwaukee manufacturing plant and fire like half the workers. From a money standpoint, considering the company was about to go bankrupt, for a lot of people say it made perfect sense. For the old school Harley people, that was kind of a middle finger to them. There was a lot of animosity. That was kind of the first time that you saw people get really upset with Harley Davidson as a company because of what AMF was doing. And at that time, you started to see people take there's an official Harley Davidson logo called the Bar and Shield. And I'll find a picture of it and put it somewhere on the screen here. And they sell patches and all sorts of stuff with this logo, and it's a famous Harley logo. During that first AMF, those first few years of the AMF stuff, is you started to see the old school bikers flip that patch upside down. Wherever they had them on their vests or whatever, they would flip them upside down. There was a magazine at the time called Iron Horse magazine, which is like straight up bikes and babes and one of those kind of sort of trashy mags, but biker mag. One of the editors was a guy named David Snow. And from what I've been able to gather, David Snow was the first person who really said Harley and what they're doing. He talked about flipping the Bar and Shield logo upside down, and as kind of a statement to Harley Davidson that you weren't going to purchase a bike from them anymore. Simply going to buy older bikes, build your own. You saw a lot of people during that time frame chopping up and building their own bikes out of old bikes instead of buying new ones. Fast forward to 1981, a group of the business people bought Harley back from AMF and made it its own separate entity again. Some of those people were involved with AMF and running Harley during the AMF years, but it became kind of its own creature again. And that was really like phase 3 of Harley's history. So you have up till 1969 is like phase 1, 69 to 81 is phase 2, the AMF years, and then 81 till now is kind of phase 3. You had the people who had flipped the badges during the AMF years and were like, screw Harley and everything that they're doing. On the flip side of that, you had a lot of people doing stuff to try to help keep Harley alive, taking their bikes in for service when they really could have done it at home, buying bikes that they didn't really want or knew they could get better, people buying bikes, stripping bad parts off of them that they knew AMF was taking shortcuts on and putting decent parts back in so that they were functional bikes. In 1981, when Harley was bought back and turned back into its own company, the people in charge decided to go a different route with who they were marketing the bikes to. Up until then, it had really been focused on bikers and biker culture and those old school biker guys. In 81, the business people involved realized that there was a lot of money from yuppies, people who wouldn't really be considered the target market for motorcycles. So they started focusing on turning Harley more into a brand. T-shirts, hats, pins. They would force the Harley Davidson shops to push out space and make space for clothing and things like that. A lot of the bikers who had helped Harley through the AMF years took offense to that. That's kind of phase 2 of the the factory thing. Both times pointed at Harley and what Harley Davidson was doing as a company, but both meaning completely different things and a completely different subset of people angry at the company for what they were doing. The points cover comes in because originally these points covers had that Bar and Shield logo on them, printed on them. So it was a really easy thing to do. You would just flip it upside down. And it was the same thing as flipping the patch, a visual statement of screw Harley Davidson. I love this bike, but I don't like the company. Fast forward another handful of years, and we're now in a different space. There is a new community of biker culture coming up online through motovlogs and through websites, and people getting interested in motorcycling, not because they grew up with bikes or they grew up around bikes, but seeing motovloggers and seeing these people online, it's a totally different culture. It's not the old school biker culture. It's much newer, fresher, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. Is kind of separated from that old biker. When you picture that old school biker thing in your head, that culture and this are kind of separate. Some of those old things that old school bikers did, like flipping points covers, have kind of taken on new meaning. For instance, on Harley Davidsons, the bar and shield logo isn't on the points cover anymore. On most of the bikes that they sell now, it gives you the size of the engine. The 883s have 883, 1200s have 1200, the 114s, it shows you the size of the engine. Flipping this upside down has less to do with saying F the factory and more to do with the bike itself. I don't know how much of this is shared throughout the community. This is what I had glommed onto and thought, that's cool, I like that idea. The reason I flipped mine is I don't like stock motorcycles at all. I don't feel like anyone should buy a bike and not do anything to it. In my opinion, totally my opinion, you should make it your own. And for me, I absolutely, both of the bikes that I've owned, modded the hell out of them, started pulling stuff off of them like day one, just to make it more mine, make it stand out when it's lined up against a bunch of other bikes that are the same make and model. Flipping the points cover, I had read somewhere on the internet, it's kind of like the bell, the road gremlin bell, and it's a little woohooey, but it's a way for you to very simply, when you first get a bike, to let the spirit of the bike know that you intend on modding it a lot. Changing out bars, changing out lights, painting, just making it your own and making it kind of an extension of yourself. And the easiest thing that you can do, since it's two tiny little bolts, when you first get your bike home, is to flip the points cover so that the spirit of the bike knows that you intend on having that kind of interaction with it. So that's why I do it, and I enjoy it. I also just like screwing with as much of my bike as I can, and something as simple as flipping this upside down just makes me feel good. There's a very quick history on what it's meant throughout the years, where kind of that ideology came from. There are some old school biker guys who love Harley Davidson and love the company and love what they're doing, who kind of would take offense to seeing the bar and shield logo upside down. Again, you don't really see them on the points covers much anymore. There's also newer the factory thing happening, where Harley's not been doing very well over the last handful of years. As I'm recording this, about a month ago or so, they got kicked out of the Fortune 500 because their stock is doing so horribly. They just announced about a week or so ago that a bunch of the new models that they were going to be releasing, they're not going to release, and a lot of people were looking forward to the direction that Harley was going with those new models. There's a lot of people who are getting upset with the factory again, and I'm starting to see this kind of mentality, the flipping the bar and shield logo, coming up again more and more. But that's the information that I've come up with digging around. Again, I'm totally a noob to all of this stuff and was not into bikes at all up until a couple years ago. Some of this information could be totally wrong. And if you were around during the AMF years or before, and there's something that I've gotten wrong in all of this, by all means, hop into the comments and let me know. I'd be more than happy to correct myself if I am doing and saying something wrong. But that is just kind of the take that I've gotten digging around on the internet, trying to find as much information as I can. And that is why I flip mine. Should you flip yours? It's entirely up to you, man. It's your bike. Do what you want. Anyway, that was fairly short. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you got some useful information out of it. Peace. See you next time. Bye.